we have a verdict for you in the Jerry Burns trial, the man who was on trial for murder in the first degree in connection with the death of Michelle Martinko. Now, she was brutally bludgeoned to death back on December 19th, 1979. The jury found Burns guilty, and his sentencing is set for a later date, but he does face life in prison without the possibility of parole. This was a fascinating case where investigators in the state used advances in technological DNA testing to match Burns to the crime. This trial represents one in a long list of cold case murders that have suddenly heated up. We want to start right now with a great guest, Robert J. Riley, who is a friend of Michelle Martinko and a researcher who has been studying this case. Great to have you here, Robert.
Well, thanks for having me on.
So let me get your perspective. Verdict came down yesterday. This has been a long time in the making. Your reaction?
Oh, very happy. Surprised that it only took the jury a couple hours to come to that conclusion. Kind of took everyone there by surprise. We had to hustle to get back to the courtroom. But no, it's nice to see that reasonable people can arrive at a pretty easy decision, we thought.
Let me ask you this. One of the eerie parts about this case is the why. Have you thought about why Jerry Burns killed Michelle?
Well, sure. We all have. And I guess it comes down to the things that weren't, the evidence that wasn't available to the jury in this case, the things that we knew, the searches from his computer, the warrant that was taken there, that showed that this man had a history of very deviant, very sick case in pornography, strangulation, murder, rape. So we knew the jury didn't know that, but we knew that this kind of gave us an insight into probably what he was thinking in 1979. We assume it started off as a sexual attack, and it went bad. He fought, and he wasn't able to carry it out. So we think that's the why. We think she was a random person chosen. He was going to do this to someone that night.
We're talking about something from 1979. Was there a point when you just thought about giving up? We're never going to find who did this to her. This is it. It's just going to be an unsolved case. That's the reality we have to live with.
I think so. I think there were moments the last few years, even the police, when you start crossing off, as they said, 161 people, and all of those included the obvious suspects, the ex-boyfriends, the people around in her life. You start thinking, wow, if this is random, it's going to be almost impossible to find that needle in a haystack.
Did you ever think it was somebody that was already checked off? Did you think it was an ex-boyfriend at any point, or you said, it can't be them? Or did you not, you said, hey, maybe let's take a second look at these people?
Oh, absolutely. I think I was a thorn in the side of the local law enforcement, Officer Denlinger. There was a couple that I just thought there was so much circumstantial evidence. We could point to them. Certainly they could have been involved. And I made Officer Denlinger explain to me many times, how are you so sure that this DNA you have belongs to the killer? What makes you so sure? And he kept on saying, we've got it in 2 spots, at least, in the crime scene. We know it's the killers, so we just have to keep finding people to test and find someone's DNA that matches.
There was, you mentioned being a thorn in law enforcement's side. We talked about, maybe family and friends never giving up. But do you feel that law enforcement at one point was going to give up unless something happened? Did you feel that they just had taken a back seat on this? Again, we're talking about a murder that happened from 1979. Did you feel that law enforcement was putting this on the back burner?
I didn't. When I got involved in this in 2013, Officer Larison at the time had been working the case for a while. He said that he was getting burnt out on the case, but he turned it over to another set of eyes, Investigator Denlinger, who came in with a real passion for the case. And he just kept on working it methodically. He just wanted to keep on finding names, people that he had never heard of before that he could test this DNA against. So no, I really have to hand it to the Sierra Rapids Police Department. They really pursued it with a passion.
Yeah, it's amazing to see these cold cases, as I said, heating up. The advances in technology. We wouldn't have had an answer to what happened to Michelle if it wasn't for this technology. I'm curious, was there ever a point during the course of this trial when you felt maybe the state doesn't have enough. You know, they're relying so much on this technology, but there's no direct eyewitnesses, there was no motive, there was no letter, there's no surveillance footage, and yet it was relying so heavily on this DNA. Were you ever concerned maybe they just don't have enough? Maybe the jury will feel that Burns didn't do this. Maybe the state didn't prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt.
Oh, that's a great question. And I think the answer honestly would be yes. Through the course of a trial, you're riding a waves of emotion every day. At the end of every day, I'd get with the Stonebreakers and say, how do you think it went? And, you know, every day would be a little bit different. You know, we were always confident of the case, but you just never know what 12 people on a jury are thinking. Are they thinking the same thing that you're thinking? So it was kind of a lesson in encouragement every day, bolstering each other's emotions on it. But what we did think was a great addition to the DNA evidence was that jailhouse informer. We thought that he added a lot. And in closing, it was very interesting what Mr. Maybank said. He said, you know, this informant could have come in and said, hey, here's exactly what Jerry Burns did. Here's how he did it. But no, all he said was a few things that seemed to be inculpatory of Mr. Burns. So we thought he was a very strong witness and added to the already strong case.
Now, you've talked a little bit about Mr. Burns, and you are a researcher. What did you find out about him besides perhaps deviant online search histories or things like that? What did you learn about Mr. Burns over the course of from 1979 until 2018? What should our viewers know about this man? What was he up to?
Well, you know, because so he comes from a farming community, so he was in sales and in farm implement equipment back in 1979. Started other businesses over the course of town, but don't believe the picture of a well-loved, honest business. Now he had a few brushes with the law as far as how he ran his previous business. He extorted some money. I don't want to get in trouble legally here, but there were some questions about his character even then. But I think the biggest thing that we focused on was here was a guy living in plain sight, kind of a quiet life, but wow, that search history goes beyond, you know, what most people would call the normal type of pornography, if there is a normal kind. His main search on these was blonde strangulation. That search was his most common search, and the videos that would go off of that search were things that were simulated raping and killing of blonde girls. That really just colors your whole picture of the person. I think that was hard for this small town that he lived in to follow that, even though they knew that he wasn't a perfect citizen. So these are really, when you research him, there's not a whole lot to come up with except these couple of things that come out, and you think, well, those are stains in a person's reputation. But again, that doesn't mean he killed someone. They just add to a person's overall profile.
Yeah, it's quite the colorful background, to say the least. Robert, I wish we had a little bit more time. First, I want to thank you for coming on, but I also want to say that I think Michelle would be very appreciative, and thank you for all the work that you've been doing to try to get an answer as to what happened to her. So from all of us, thank you very much for your hard work, and now we're going to move on to the sentencing date and see what happens. Robert Riley, thank you so much.
Thanks for your coverage.
All right, everybody, let's take a break. When we come back, you know what we're going to be talking about, Harvey Weinstein. Stay tuned.